Ever just find yourself flipping through channels and suddenly, bam, there's John Amos on your screen.
Yeah.
And for a second, you're like, oh, hey, it's Cleo from Coming to America.
Right.
Or wait a minute, wasn't he also in? And then it hits you.
Yeah.
This guy's been in everything.
Absolutely.
We're making a deep dive into the life and work of the one and only John Amos.
An incredible career, too, when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. Where do we even begin with a career like this?
Well, I think what makes John Amos so fascinating is that his career really took off during this pivotal time in television history.
Yeah.
It was the 70s,
Okay.
a time of massive change, and here he is right in the thick of it.
Right.
But it wasn't just about him being on TV. It was about what he represented.
Okay.
He was challenging norms, reshaping how Black characters were portrayed.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't talk about John Amos without talking about Good Times.
Of course, Good Times. But honestly, before he was laying down the law as James Evans Sr., he was quietly making history on the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Oh, that's right. I almost forgot about that.
Easy one to overlook, right?
It is.
But think about it.
Yeah.
He's Gordy the Weatherman, not relegated to the sidelines or anything like that. He's part of the ensemble, bringing the subtle wit and charm
he really is.
To a massively popular show.
And in the 70s, no less.
Exactly. That's huge.
It is huge.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, a Black weatherman on a hit show back then.
It was groundbreaking.
Really was.
You're talking about challenging preconceived notions, showing audiences, especially Black audiences, that they could aspire to be more than just the stereotypes that were often out there.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, representation matters.
Absolutely.
And you're right. He brought this certain something to that role.
Potential.
Even in those early roles, you see glimpses of that comedic timing.
Yes.
That deadpan delivery that would later make Cleo McDowell so iconic.
Oh, absolutely.
It wasn't all stern dad energy with John Amos.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not even close. He was incredibly versatile, and you really see that when he lands the role of James Evans Sr. on Good Times.
Okay, but before we dive into Good Times,
sure,
we need to talk about Norman Lear.
Ah, yes.
The Norman Lear connection.
Because this wasn't just any sitcom.
Right.
This was part of a movement.
It really was. Lear was changing the game with those sitcoms.
Absolutely.
Right.
They were tackling social issues head on and doing it in a way that was both thought-provoking and entertaining.
Yeah, and to have a Black family front and center.
The Evans family.
Yeah, in the 70s, depicting the realities of life in the projects.
It was groundbreaking.
In no other way to put it, it was groundbreaking.
But it wasn't without its risks.
Oh, I bet.
What do you mean?
Well, you're dealing with humor, right?
Uh-huh.
But also with very real struggles, poverty discrimination.
Yeah.
And the challenge was to portray that authentically.
Right.
Without falling into caricature.
Ooh, that's a tough line to walk.
It is. And John Amos was very aware of that responsibility.
He seemed like he really cared about getting it right.
Oh, absolutely.
Ugh.
There's this quote from him where he talks about portraying Black characters with dignity and dimension.
And that wasn't always easy, especially in the world of sitcoms where the pressure's on to be funny.
Yeah, and sometimes those two things, authenticity and being funny, they can be at odds.
Exactly. And that tension really comes to a head during his time on Good Times.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay.
But let's just say that John Amos's commitment to portraying characters with dignity and dimension wasn't always smooth sailing.
I bet things got interesting behind the scenes.
Oh, you better believe it.
So Good Times. A show about a working-class family just trying to make it in Chicago.
The Evans family.
Right. And within those struggles, within that context, there's this humor.
Yeah.
This heart that resonated with so many people.
Right. Absolutely. And early on, it was a huge success. Critically acclaimed a hit with audiences.
And rightfully so. You mentioned this tension between entertainment and representation.
Right.
What was going on behind the scenes during those Good Times years?
So as the show went on, there was this noticeable shift.
Right.
The storylines, they started focusing more on JJ.
The eldest son?
Yeah, JJ and his comedic antics. And often it felt like it was at the expense of the parents' struggles, the realities they face.
I see. So it became more about the laughs.
In a way. And that's when John Amos, along with Esther Roll, who played Florida Evans, they started voicing their concerns.
They weren't afraid to speak their minds.
Not at all. They felt strongly that this shift was undermining what the show was really about.
And what was that?
It's about the strength of the Black family, the resilience,
Yeah.
not just relying on these, tired tropes for easy laughs.
And you can see their point.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
They helped create something special,
Yeah.
and they didn't want to see it lose its integrity.
So it was more than just a sitcom for them.
It was about representation,
Yeah.
about how these images on screen, they have real-world implications.
That's a heavy weight to carry.
It is.
Yeah.
And John Amos, he wasn't afraid to fight for that.
Good for him. But that probably caused some friction.
It did. Those disagreements with Norman Lear, they became pretty public.
Oh, wow. And ultimately,
I believe John Amos was let go from Good Times
he was fired.
at the end of season 3.
Yeah. Wow. And then what happened to his character, James Evans?
Well, they killed him off.
Oh, they killed him off.
Yeah.
Wow. I know that happens sometimes on sitcoms, but
But this was different.
it was different because...
Because he was such a central figure, audiences connected with James Evans with the strength he represented.
So to have him just suddenly gone like that,
He left a void.
it did. And it really highlights how powerful
How powerful.
John Amos's vision for the show, his presence, truly was.
Absolutely. And the amazing thing is, this
Yeah.
commitment to impactful storytelling, it didn't end there.
It didn't.
No. In fact, it led him to a role that would become just as iconic.
Let me guess, Roots.
Roots, exactly. Talk about a complete 180 from Good Times.
Right, from comedy to something so powerful, so raw.
And he absolutely nailed it.
He really did. I mean, Roots, talk about a powerful story.
Powerful's an understatement.
And his performance,
Breathtaking.
he just brought this whole other level.
We need that rawness, that
I couldn't
intensity.
imagine anyone else.
It's hard, isn't it?
Really hard to picture anyone else as Kunta Kinte.
He embodied that role.
Completely, and he earned an Emmy nomination for it.
He did well-deserved to.
Absolutely cemented his place as a dramatic actor.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that.
So we have Good Times and Roots. On the surface, two totally different roles,
Complete opposites, almost.
but connected by this thread
Of
of portraying this
the
experience.
Black experience.
Yeah, with such honesty and depth.
He had this way of doing that.
He did. And it wasn't just those two roles.
No, not at all.
You see it in everything he did.
Name a role. It's there.
Cleo McDowell.
Hilarious.
So funny.
Yeah.
But also that warmth.
Right. He brought humanity to it.
He did. Even Admiral Fitzwallace in The West Wing.
Completely different genre.
Totally.
But that same commitment.
It's like he had this rule.
A rule.
Yeah, like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right.
Bring that authenticity to it.
Exactly. And he never stopped working either.
Never staged productions, documentaries with his son.
Like the man just loved to tell stories.
He did, and he did it his way.
His son said it best, I think.
What's that?
He called his dad an outspoken advocate for positive portrayals
That's perfect.
of Black people in Hollywood.
It's true. John Amos wasn't just happy to be there.
No, he used his
To
position
make things better.
to push for change.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
how should we remember John Amos? What's his legacy?
That's the question, isn't it? He left us with so much. Those characters we love.
James Evans, Sr., Kunta Kinte, Cleo McDowell.
Unforgettable.
But it goes beyond that, too,
It does.
Yeah.
He was fighting for something bigger.
for representation for change.
And he wasn't afraid to be vocal about it.
That's important.
So important, especially today with all the conversations we're having.
About diversity, about inclusion.
John Amos, he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
He was a trailblazer,
A talented actor, but also
an advocate for change.
his life, his career,
It really makes you think.
about the power of representation.
The impact one person can have.
John Amos's legacy, it's a testament to that
Absolutely. And I have a feeling his work is going to keep inspiring people.
for a long time to come.
I think so, too.
Well, this has been quite a journey.
It has. Thanks for having me.
John Amos, a true legend. Thanks for listening, everybody.